Community solar gardens is something I've also just been getting a little bit more acquainted with. There's a lot of different developers that are going to start really looking to have people subscribe to their gardens because they have tax incentives to produce these before 2016. One thing I started to notice in having some of these conversations around the city is that it seems like there's almost a bypassing of the community in community solar garden. I've been a little concerned, and again, I'm not an expert in this, but as a journalist, I've been looking at the fact that a lot of, some of the developers are certainly going to some of the big commercial entities that can be part of this. And then there's other big organizations, nonprofits such as churches, where those congregants can be part of a community solar garden. But there's also a large segment of the community that either doesn't understand yet how they can be part of a community solar garden, how they can decide among these developers. But also there's a credit check that's involved with a lot of this, and a lot of low-income communities who could benefit from the cost savings involved, are potentially being bypassed. So one of the people I've met in recent weeks, months, is Timothy, who is part of Cooperative Energy Futures, and Timothy's going to talk a little bit about what he does and how his collective is doing it.
Sure. And I'm actually going to take a little bit of a step back, because I think, when we talk about sustainability, energy is such a huge factor, but it's largely invisible. We are using energy all the time. Right now this room is being heated, it's being lit, we're running electrical equipment, but we don't usually actually see the facilities and the things that are building all of that or that are running all of that. One of the things I think about sometimes, I think would really change the way we think about energy. So, every week, if you're in Minneapolis, and I assume most other places, you take your trash cart and your recycling cart out to the curb. Well, what if you had to take your cart of coal out to the curb, the coal power that is used to provide your electricity? How much do you think that would be on a weekly basis? Guesses? It's about 70 pounds.
Wow.
Okay? So imagine every week you had to haul out your cart with 70 pounds of coal. You don't have to do that because it's being burned in a plant somewhere else and it's going up into the atmosphere. But it's just, I think, a thing that's really important to anchor ourselves in when we're working on energy, is that there are huge impacts on the climate, on public health, and also economically. We're spending, in the city of Minneapolis alone, about $450 million every year on electricity and gas. How many of you have ever thought, I would really like to get powered by solar or wind or some other kind of clean energy? Mm-hmm. Folks, right? Okay. Most folks in the room. Has anyone actually, gotten solar on your own house? Okay. Why not? What are the barriers?
Cost.
Mm-hmm.
Cost. What else?
Homeownership.
Mm-hmm.
Homeownership.
Yeah. We rent, so if our landlord doesn't do that, we're cut out of that picture.
Great.
Yeah.
What else? Cost, ownership.
It's kind of tricky, maintenance.
Maintenance, yep. The other big thing is that maybe your roof doesn't get very good sun exposure. We've run some numbers, and when you take all of those factors into account, it's about 5% of people who have a roof that is oriented the right way, that's not shaded, that they have the money to do it, that they're willing to take on that maintenance cost, that they own their own property. It's about 5% of people. That's not really a big opportunity. What community solar really does is it creates a way that automatically removes most of those barriers, and I believe can remove all of those barriers if it's done right. And essentially what community solar is you have a large solar array, and this could be on a very large flat roof or on a field or other just open area like Russ was talking about. And members of a community, whether that's residents or local organizations or businesses, can subscribe and essentially own part of that array and get a credit on their electrical bill from the energy that's produced by that array. Now this means essentially that anyone who has an energy bill can participate. You don't actually have to own your own property. If you move to a different house, you still get to take your subscription with you. And you get to be a part of a much larger array, which is more cost effective, so it drives the cost down. You can also finance it so that instead of paying one time, and it is a lot more affordable to pay one time, just to give you a sense of comparison, installing solar on an individual home, if you're paying for it as a homeowner, right now might cost between about $12,000 and $25,000 depending on the scale and size. You could get the same amount of solar subscribed in one of these community solar gardens for in the range of $6,000 to $10,000. So it's still a significant upfront cost if you're buying it upfront. But you have to think about, most of us spend about $1,000 a year on electricity. And these subscriptions can cover all your electrical needs, and they last for 25 years. So there's a real benefit in that. The other cool thing is that you don't have to buy them up front. You can also subscribe to these solar arrays and pay on a monthly basis. And that's essentially what we're doing right now to pay for coal plants and nuclear plants and all of this other stuff that we may not particularly like through our utility bill, where we pay on a monthly basis, and somebody else has built all of that stuff to provide our energy. This is an opportunity for us to pay on a monthly basis and pay for building that solar energy that's serving us directly. There's a couple of things that I'm really concerned about in the community solar industry that, as a cooperative and as a member-owned business, Cooperative Energy Futures is really working to solve. One of those is the scale and location issue. So most of the developers we're talking with are developing very large solar arrays, 3 or 4 acres, 3 to 5 acres, and sometimes even aggregating multiple of those projects in 10 project groups. So you're talking 30 acres, 40 acres, 50 acres, out in a rural area somewhere. And that's better than coal. It's a good thing, but there's a lot of cost, and also since solar is variable, you get less stability in terms of being able to rely on that energy if you put all of your energy in one place, because it's all going to vary at the same time. Whereas if we put a lot of energy in many different places, it becomes much more predictable. Additionally, people don't get to see it. The people who are subscribing probably don't live right next to that big solar farm. And in terms of getting people to start seeing clean energy as normal, and it's something that's all around us, having solar as much as possible in the communities where we operate. And so we're focused primarily on large rooftops, like large commercial buildings, sometimes churches or schools or various buildings like that, that are based in the communities that we operate. A second thing is that most of the projects that are currently going on with community solar, the primary people pushing them are the installers, the people who want to put solar up. It's their business, they want to sell solar, and that's fine. But there's a lot of communities that really want to do this as a community development project, and are kind of left looking for whatever developer is going to give them a decent deal. It's not really the development is happening from a community perspective. And that's really what we've set ourselves up to do as a co-op. We're a member-owned business, so people in the community join the co-op, and in doing so actually have control. They're democratic owners of the business. They vote for its board, they can run for its board, they make the basic decisions about how it runs. And then we work with communities, with neighborhood associations, with congregations, with just groups of neighbors to identify places where we can develop community solar in their community. How can we work with them to reach out to their neighbors, other people that they know, through workplaces, places of worship, all of that type of thing, to develop community solar. And the third thing I would say, and this really gets at what you're saying around economic access, a lot of what's going on right now with community solar is reliant on credit checks and people who have high income and all of that type of thing, which is kind of again, locking most of the people who could benefit the most from this out of the picture. And this is really a tool for wealth building and saving money, because a lot of the numbers we're running, you could actually lock in 25 years of your power at a 10% or more discount from your current electric rate. And so this is really a tool for helping people save money, but the people who need it most are not being served. And so a lot of what we're working on and focused on right now as a cooperative is how do we pull in community development banks and work with the city of Minneapolis and the leverage they have with Xcel Energy to make sure that there's a way to finance it that doesn't rely so much on personal income as it does on a very secure way to get repayment through utility bills or other measures, that it's actually linking your subscription for the solar with the savings. So you're saving on your electric bill, that's actually creating the cash flow that you can use to pay for the subscription itself. And we're working with a number of different economic justice groups in the city, working with workforce development groups to make sure we're actually training and doing job training for low-income people in North Minneapolis or in like Phillips and Midtown Minneapolis and other areas across the Twin Cities, to really make sure that this is a tool for economic development and community building.